Hello, everyone. Welcome to DVT208. Thank you for joining us here today. I'm Ali Maz, and I head the go-to-market for AWS's portfolio of developer services. And today we will be talking about how AI is transforming software development lifecycle. We will share some practical frameworks for you to think about this transformation and maturity of this transformation. We will share real-world examples about how some of the companies have done this transformation. And towards the end of it, we will also talk a little bit about what the future holds for all of us. So let's get started. This is an image which is super interesting to me, and I want you guys to spend 5 to 10 seconds looking at it and imagining this as a parallel to you shipping software. So as you think about it, right, what do you see? It's a busy road. There's a lot of delivery happening. There's a lot of software getting shipped here. What you don't see, and what I am sure you don't see in real world as well, is the backlog that never gets addressed, because that is what never comes out. So this is an audience moment for me. So with a show of hands, tell me if you have been part of a developer team where you have had more backlog than you can possibly deliver. Exactly. But keep your hands up. Tell me if people who have been in those rooms, you have had to sit in gruesome, painful meetings where you have had to take decisions about prioritization. Thank you. So there are things about software development that are very awesome and amazing, but then there are things we never talk about. And there are reasons we don't talk about. Irrespective, if you have agile, you use waterfall, you use Kanban or whatever methodology is your flavor of the month. The reality is there is almost always more work than people available to deliver it. Before AI, right, there are only two possible solutions around it. Either you increase the number of people or you ruthlessly prioritize. The issue with that is that even when you do both together, nothing happens. The problem still persists. And so there is this notion in the industry, and I want to, before I introduce the two gentlemen here, I want you to think about this, right? Like, this is a notion or a situation where we are shipping against capacity. And this constraint has defined software development for the last, 2 decades or 3 decades maybe? So with that, the idea of AI-driven software development is all about AI taking over the undifferentiated heavy lifting, while you and your developers focus on the critical and the creative aspects of software development. Now, I'm sure you would have heard about this a lot of times, and today we are not going to talk about that, because that is a boring topic now. As we sort of get into this session, you will see me talk about the problem space, how and why AI matters, and how to think about maturing and that organization that you represent, and talk about what maturity looks like. Then we have Mr. Ricardo, Dr. Ricardo from Ericsson. He's been leading that effort at Ericsson, particularly leveraging Kiro CLI to drive about a change in software development processes. And then finally, we have Doug, who's the principal product manager for Kiro CLI, and he'll talk to us about what the future holds for us and for you, and how that future fundamentally redefines how software is going to get shipped in the future. Okay, so now that we have set up some kind of a preamble of what we are going to talk about, let's just spend a couple of minutes on how did we get here. So let's sort of all date and age ourselves and go back to the 1980s. For some of us, at least, that's a reality. Software development, the way it matured is we started with agile. There was waterfall, then they became agile. As internet speeds came in and all, you could ship and update software on the fly. We then sort of realized that developer teams and ops teams need to work together really well, so here you have DevOps. And then we sort of said, okay, you know what, why don't we automate everything and manage only things that matter? And so then we started automating CI/CD, we started automating testing, and so on and so forth. Now, in that journey of 30, 35 years, notice human is almost always at the center. Any tool, any process, anything we do was all about making the developer more efficient. Here comes 2023 and all our worlds changed. And so in that world, we ushered into an era that we personally call the bolt-on era. You had AI plugged into everything and everything. You writing code, you need AI to assist you there. You are writing unit tests, you need AI to assist you there. You are doing code reviews, you need AI to assist you there. Again, notice human is still at the center. If you go back to that highway, that road, in that road, the driver is now going faster. That's the intent. Now, as we end 2025 and get into the world of 2026, we are now sort of in that era of AI native. And in that world, increasingly with LLMs getting smarter and tools getting smarter, we are increasingly getting into the era of asynchronous and autonomous workflows. Now, it doesn't mean that anything is going away. It is that things or technology is adding itself into your existing processes. And so now it's not just about technology. What we really need to think about is how do we change processes? How do we change culture? And so before we get there, right, so far we have sort of talked about 2 or 3 things. Shipping against capacity. We are moving from human-centric to AI native. And the third is, remember, some of you might remember the capability maturity model. Right? As organizations get into that journey of people and culture change, you need to sort of have a rubric with which you measure where you are in terms of maturity and where you need to be. And so that's so hold with me right now. This is where we are. And now let's talk about the few concerns that some of the personas have, right? And that's what our internal teams tell us. That's what our customers tell us. That's what you tell us. And so 28 million developers out there, they talk about, hey, an unprecedented change is coming to my industry. I don't know how to be prepared. Now, some of those developers are also practitioners or managers. They have evaluated for the last 2 years, 12 or 13 or 14, number is just a number, development tools, and they are concerned about reliability. They almost always compare these tools at a point in time, and by the time their evaluation is complete, the product has fundamentally changed. And so they are concerned about reliability. Now, when you go to the top, you talk to the CEOs, CTOs, CIOs, CFOs. They basically understand the value of AI, but for them, it is all about scaling it across the organization. All of them, so think about it, right? Like developers are worried about relevancy, practitioners, managers, middle tier is worried about relevancy, and C-level executives are worried about scale. But underlying all of this is one big question that they're all asking, and that's, to us, that's the common root for all of us. And that question is, how do I achieve a paradigm shift rather than a step increment? And this is it. That is the question that matters. Everyone can add another AI tool to their toolbox. It's a step increment. It does not fundamentally change the way you are going to think about software. Today, the debate and the discourse is all about how can I make my development processes or developer 10% more effective? You know what? I will be awesome if I make it 15% more effective. How about 18? But that's not the problem. I think we are still thinking too small. I think where we are going in 2026 and beyond is about 10x thinking, 10x creativity. And I think that requires a paradigm shift, and it's not just about performance improvements or doing it faster. And so the answer, right? The answer for us is we prepare the development teams of tomorrow by positioning AI as the central collaborator. That does not mean that the human is out of the loop. All it means is that AI is orchestrating. In the bolt-on era, you had AI that was acting like a GPS. So if human-centric design, developer is designing or working, AI is the GPS that guides, so you accomplish the task faster. In the world of AI being the orchestrator, the relationship completely flips. And once it flips, the paradigms are different. I'll give you an example. So today, AI is not just an assistant, right? In this world of AI native, it is actually a collaborator. It is participating with you in planning. It is helping you decompose complex requirements into tasks. It is also helping you design or create architectural patterns that are relevant to your situation. So for all practical purposes, it's no longer an assistant, but a peer. It's no longer a tool, but somebody sitting right next to you. And once it requires a little mental shift, but once you make that mental shift, possibilities open. Because if you go back to that highway, now you have literally created another lane. And that's where it's not humans driving, it's somebody else driving. While humans are still. So now the question really is, should we as developers be worried? I don't think so. Quite the contrary. It's actually elevating the developer from just a practitioner to something that they do really well, which is decision making, which is all about insight, which is about validation. You've got to be there to steer the lane that AI is operating on more efficiently and more productively. And so now let's sort of culminate this into a very simple framework, right? It's as simple as this gets is you have AI-assisted developer. This is where 2023 started, and you are there. Now, we are increasingly getting into this area of AI-driven development, where AI is taking the role of the central orchestrator, and your humans are staged around it. And in that world, you're now moving from the realm of individual productivity to system level or team level productivity. And now the area where nobody is, and we will probably get, is the AI managed development. In the AI managed development, think of that highway, and now think about all the lanes being run by AI, and human is sitting on the side making sure all the decisions are being validated, all the right sort of structures are being ensured, and the system integrity is ensured. And so roles are going to morph, and that's what we think. But this is another way of sort of thinking about where you are in that journey in terms of your organizations. And so now I will give the floor to Dr. Ricardo, who actually is leading that effort real time. How long has it been? 6 months since you've started this journey?
12 months, I should say.
12 months. So who better than to talk about it from a real world example point of view than Mr. Ricardo? Over to you, sir.
Thanks a lot. So I have a surprise for you, because I think we have such a nice audience, and we are prepared here, for more like a rave party, right? So I just talked to Steve Aoki to come here and give a show for us here in the 30 minutes we have. No, I'm just kidding. We're going to talk about the Ericsson journey here. Yeah, so thanks a lot, Ali and Doug, for an invitation to be here with you today. As you said, we in Ericsson have started this journey quite some time ago, and it's a journey that we have had actually many people contributing towards its success, I should say. We have even colleagues here in the audience, like Doug and other people who have been also kind of doing great work in their parts of Ericsson to also help the company to be successful in this whole AI transformation. But, to set the kind of context here, first thing I'm going to ask you is, how many of you have heard of Ericsson before? Can you raise your hands? Yeah, quite many. Maybe if it was years ago, I think the complete audience probably would raise the hands. We used to be in the consumer market back in the days. We used to have very nice mobile phones, probably the best in the market. But basically, consumer market was never really our core business. And then we decided at some point to focus really on our core business, which is actually to provide top-class high-performance networks. So in one picture, I'm trying to give you the scale of how, let's say, impactful Ericsson is to the world. Around 30% of the entire 5G traffic outside China, in the rest of the world, is actually going through Ericsson networks as we speak right now. So we're talking about billions of subscribers that are using Ericsson products, even though they don't know that. So probably if you are navigating, the web right now, you are using indirectly some of our products in the market. More specifically, I'm part of one group in Ericsson that's responsible for the products that actually help the operators to monetize their networks. Because basically, it's not enough really, to have the top radio equipment and et cetera that Ericsson provides. You need to have software on top of that to be able to make money out of your networks. So here in the US, AT&T, T-Mobile US, Verizon, et cetera, those are example of customers we have. And then in this part of Ericsson that I'm kind of supporting the organization there, we are actually delivering products to those big operators and also small operators in the world to enable them to sell whatever products they want to sell to their subscribers, to deliver the services in the best way possible, enabling a very smooth experience for those subscribers, and of course, to get paid, right? Because they are here to make money. Then we are helping them to monetize things. But you know, the reality is, this is very hard type of software to develop. Both here where I'm in Ericsson, but even, let's say, globally, when we talk about telco, it's very complex. And then this complexity is just going up. Because there are every day just more expectations. People want to have extremely low latency in their networks. They want to have endless amount of data flowing, you know, through the networks, and they don't want to pay much for that, actually. So then how we help those operators, right, to provide great service, it's a challenge. And then we need to actually keep, you know, improving ourselves to provide to our customers, the operators, best-in-class products, and really fight in a very fierce market. And then basically, just kind of, you know, the traditional ways of developing software, they are not enough anymore. And then I tell you even more than that. If you just kind of bring, you know, AI tools to your kind of set of processes and etc., that will not help you either. You need to think beyond that and how you can actually transform, how you actually introduce AI in your ways of working, and then basically bring to light what we call AI native software development. So in practice, what we call here AI native software development is in a way back to basics. So basically, in the context where we develop software, as I said, we are handling very complex systems, right? We have thousands of engineers working together around the globe. So it's very hard to have those agile principles, small teams working very close together, no handovers, you know, and etc. People just doing things end to end, because those systems are just too complex. And then in AI native software development, then we introduce a set of agents that actually help to handle this complexity associated with developing those very complex systems, so that I can actually be true agile even in large-scale software development, which is the case of Ericsson. Another thing that's very important to highlight here is in AI native software development, I'm able actually to do an extreme version of what's called shift left that you all here probably have heard about, where I'm able to introduce quality from the very first day until the very end when I'm releasing whatever new requirement in my product. Basically having those agents supporting during the process of designing the solutions I need to put in place, supporting the process here to develop the code, following whatever conventions I need to follow, reviewing solutions and the code in real time to make sure I'm actually taking into consideration very early whatever non-functional requirements that I need to take into consideration throughout the entire life cycle of my features. So then AI native is about having, let's say, non-functional aspects being taken into consideration from the very first day. And then we are making sure here that we are not, let's say, getting coding things. We are making sure that we're getting code done, right? In a way, it doesn't matter if we are coding or if an agent is doing that on our behalf. What matters is we are fulfilling those requirements we need to provide in the best way possible, with the right quality level and with the right time to market. Then basically here, we have established a blueprint that includes the 7 agents that you can see here. Of course, you could do this in various ways. This is the way we have done. And this is the way we are doing today still. Will this be the same forever? Oh, there is a chance we keep evolving this, right? And then maybe we're going to add other agents. But today, those 7 agents, they are the ones we have. And then basically, they, as I said to you before, here, those agents, they have different skills. And then basically, we keep adding skills so that those agents can help the cross-functional team that will be developing each requirement end-to-end to take into consideration, as I said, those, especially, again, I'm highlighting a lot non-functional requirements, because those are the hard ones to take into consideration very early in the software development process. We tend to focus a lot on functional for obvious reasons. But if we don't have actually and not focus on non-functional, we know what happens later on in whatever development process that we need to kind of put forward. So here, those agents are really helping us to focus on especially non-functional very, very early in this process here. And then basically starting there, having product managers working very close together with the engineers. The reason I even highlighted in red here, I was talking to my manager and then, but why you have the product manager there in red? We don't like those guys. No problems here though, I like you. Am I kidding, right? But the problem is there is always, a kind of, let's say, debate between the engineers and the product managers because they have different responsibilities. They need to focus on different things. And they have the, let's say, focus, and at times they are not focusing on the same thing, right? And very often they are not close enough. And then in AI native software development, the product managers, they need to be here together, really, with the software development teams. Because again, we want to do things end to end. I'm developing one requirement, I want to see it realized from the very, very beginning here when product manager is actually, kind of pushing down a specific requirement, helping to clarify what needs to be done there, and then following up that until the very end when I'm actually releasing that software, taking into consideration whatever, again, non-functional aspects that I need to take into consideration. Security, performance, UX, you name it. And then basically, here is where we have had, let's say, great support from AWS to realize this. Because we have been working together with AWS from the very beginning when this product was still called Code Whisper. And I tell you, it was a bit painful beginning because the tool was not where our engineers expect it to be. And then they were kind of complaining. I'll be very open here. Why are we using this crap? I said, no, guys, not crap. This is starting now, right? We're in the beginning of the journey. Give it some time. No, but I want this. I said, no, you want too much. Give it some time. We have the confidence this will improve fast. And of course, in our very open relationship with AWS, guys have assured us time and time again that they had what would take, to evolve this product very quickly. And they delivered. So today, we are, now the name of the product is Kiro, as you probably know. And then there was actually, let's say, kind of a big breakthrough around April when AWS introduced, by that time it was called Kiro CLI. So basically providing agentic capabilities to this product. And you have heard a lot of hype about agents, right? It's everywhere. People are talking about agents here and then, even an agent to put some coffee with some biscuits and etc., right? We don't need to go that far, of course. But, the thing is, this is really a game changer. And I tell you, before and after, day and night, before Kiro CLI nowadays, with agentic capabilities, was there. Our engineers, they were not as excited about using this type of tool in the software development cycle. After that, we had to start stopping the guys. No, guys, wait a bit. We need to take into consideration a bit of security aspect, this and that. We cannot just go on your own. Because everyone got so excited about having actually agentic capabilities, supporting them in realizing the ideas, helping them to let the creativity flow, right? So this was really a game changer. And then, of course, the other two things that actually make this really spectacular, I can even say, is actually combining the right context that we give to the agents that we have here that are operationalized using Kiro CLI, but also giving access to tools. Because if you don't do that, then you are limiting it, right? It's like your agent has no arms. How much you can do without that, right? So here, this model context protocol has been the other, let's say, breakthrough that has helped to bring things to the next level. And then the combination of these that we call system knowledge plane where we actually provide more digested information to the agents here so that they know about our products. Otherwise, they will never know really. I hope that's the case. They will not know about our secret sauce, right, in our products. I cannot expect it's there in Kiro, because if it's there, we have a big problem, right? And then I need to provide that. And it's more than just, giving access to everything. It was just too much. We're talking about millions and millions of lines of code here, guys. And of course, lines of code, if you have a terrible code base, maybe it doesn't mean much, right? But just to give really sense of scale, we're talking about millions, large, massive products here. So I cannot just give it everything. I need to help the tool here to really know where to look. And that's what we do with the system knowledge plane, where we have developed a few knowledge graphs that basically provide this kind of digested type of information at the right time to Kiro, so that it will help us to realize those features we need to develop. And then together with the tools, then we can achieve a lot here using this product. So, I will ask again another question to you. How many of you are using Kiro CLI, using MCP servers, etc.? How has been your experience so far? Do you like it? Yeah, but maybe what we are missing is exactly the system knowledge plane that we have here, right? But then one thing is, we are talking about thousands of people in Ericsson that we are going through this transformation now. And then, many people, they are kind of excited and they are kind of going on their own, right? But with this entire work we're doing here, what we're trying to do is we're trying to kind of raise the bar so that everyone starts from a much higher baseline, so that I can have as many 10-factor engineers in the company as possible. And the ones that are 10-factor engineers today, they will become maybe 100-factor engineers or 1,000-factor engineers, right? But then globally, we're going to actually be enabling here the community of engineers in the company to achieve much more. But I need to help, let's say, those people to know where they are. And then basically we have introduced a maturity model that basically helps really people to compare, right, where they are today to where they need to be. And then this is actually very simple. We have 4 levels here. First level is software development with AI. We just give access to the tools, people start exploring using best effort, best way they can. Then the second level, I started providing templates, access to some MCP servers, and etc. So that rather than just spinning around and, oh my God, what is the best way, where I should start, etc., people already have a good starting point, really, to start having impact. Then, the second level, I add the, let's say, more dynamic agents there, plus the system knowledge plane, where I have those graphs that I showed in the previous slide that actually provide the right context at the right time. Finally, I actually merge this technical enablement with a complete revamp of how the teams are organized and how they should behave. And then we finally achieve what we call here AI-native software development, where I really transform completely the process of developing software by introducing agents, again, natively in the ways of working, really transform whatever we have there today. So, how we really do that? Technology is essential here. And here, of course, we have this great partnership with AWS. We are working very well together. And then that's a key element to it. And then we also, at times, realize we actually need to do some things, some stuff ourselves. And then when we need to do that, we do that. But that's part of the story. Without the other 2 pillars you see here, without proper really change management, where you have the right governance approach in place, it's very hard to change a large organization. You don't need this kind of type of very structured approach if you have maybe 5, 10 people. But if you have 1,000 people, if you have 10,000 people, sorry, my friends, you never succeed introducing a big change like this. So you need to have really a formal governance approach to be successful here. And finally, if you actually, part of this change approach, we don't focus on the cultural side of things, again, you'll not be successful. Because this really requires people to think differently. You probably find yourself like, oh, I have worked like this for 15 years and it just works for me. Why am I going to change, right? But you can do better. And that's what we are saying here. And then we need to help people to realize and understand they can actually do better. And then how you do that? You need to help people. You need to help them to upskill themselves. You need to give the right incentives, right? You need to use this as well in even your performance management of people. And at the same time, again, I said we provide some good baseline to people. We should not stifle innovation. Let people innovate. They will bring things here. They will surprise you, I tell you that. Then you realize that what you started here, like this, it will just explode. And then, you know, it will be bigger than what you thought in the beginning. So, basically to wrap up here, it's not about replacing people. It's about augmenting people, right? As I said, I want to have 10 factory engineers everywhere in my organization. It's about getting the code done, not about coding. Again, AI will be more and more doing that part for us, but we still are in the driver's seat here. We still need to be behind, you know, be accountable for whatever goes through here. But then having the support of those agents will actually make the difference. And then, you know, I can give some numbers here about this transformation in Ericsson. As I said, I'm showing the numbers connected to my part of Ericsson, which is one kind of part of a very large company, right? But we have other parts of Ericsson, like in Doug's organization, etc. Also, the transformation happening as well. So if I see Ericsson as a whole, the numbers are even bigger. But of course, I'm talking about the ones I'm responsible for. So we have 1,500 plus engineers already using this AI native approach here. So making use of some of the agents. We don't have all those agents yet because it is a journey. We have heard of spec-driven development, right? AI native is a kind of, it's bigger than that. So spec-driven development is part of it, right? So we have some of the agents already there and people already using it and help us, you know, to keep evolving that. And then we already see the benefits. So rather than weeks to have software specifications in place, now we can have it in some cases in hours or just a few days. Software testing, troubleshooting can be very tricky. Imagine, I said in the beginning, these are very complex systems. Here, we'll see in some situations even weeks. It's not because people are not good. I tell you, we have great engineers in Ericsson. It's just that the complexity is too big. But then now, with the support of AI, those agents helping us here to rather than weeks, in some cases, few days, even hours, helping us to troubleshoot and test things. Are we done? Not at all. We are just kind of, you know, going through this journey as I speak here. We have already achieved a lot, but we know we're going to achieve even more. And it's where Doug actually will talk more about what is yet to come when it comes to Kiro and how it will help us in our journey. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Ricardo. I really appreciate your insights and you're just learning a little bit more about Ericsson and your journey and how you've adopted this AI native. Now, my name is Doug Clausen. I'm the product manager for the Kiro CLI, and I'm going to walk you through how we're building that future of AI development here at AWS. Now, I want to start from Ricardo's last slide and talk a bit more about how we see Kiro, which you know you've heard about a few times, how we see it fitting into this picture. So we want to support you across all three of these initiatives. But the reality is, as Ricardo said, that change management and the cultural shift are likely very unique to your organization. For example, you know, your governance requirements are unique, or your legal frameworks might vary by an industry or a different region. And your culture and how you see yourselves adopting AI is something that really only you can define. What we think is a bit more universal is that technology layer. And that's where we've been actively investing and building over the last couple of years. it's the tools and the infrastructure and the capabilities that will enable this AI-driven development. Now, I'm excited to show you today how Kiro can provide that technology foundation, but before I jump into a few demos, I want to level set on what Kiro is and what you can do with it. So Kiro gives you flexibility in how you want to work, and we have both a Agentic IDE as well as an Agentic CLI that's going to integrate AI development from prototype to production. I'm going to talk about the IDE first. So we just launched this in preview earlier this summer. We launched it in GA on November 17th, and one of the coolest features to me of the Kiro IDE is that it has this structured spec-based development, where Kiro can guide you through the requirements definition, the design, and then the implementation. Anybody tried that? I see a few, good. What I think is, what Kiro forces you to do is align on the spec first, and then Kiro executes the plan step by step after that. Or you can choose to use a conversational chat, or as the term came up, vibe coding. You can vibe code as well, and then iterate on that. It's really your choice. You choose how you want to work. You can also automate workflows with a feature that we call agent hooks. Now, agent hooks trigger on, you set them up on what you want them to trigger on, and then they take an autonomous action after that. So it's probably easiest to explain by an example. So if anyone has ever worked with localization files where they help your app work across multiple different languages, it can be a lot to keep them up to date. The agent hooks solve that problem. So you can set up an agent hook so that whenever your English localization file gets updated, the hook triggers and automatically updates your other localization files as well, keeping everything in sync. Now, these agent hooks allow you to, they focus on those repetitive tasks, allowing you to focus on other things. And then finally, the context management. Feed Kiro your documentation, connect the MCP servers like Ricardo showed you, share UI designs, help Kiro understand your whole project context, not just an isolated request. On the context side too, Kiro can automatically generate what we call steering files, and steering files are a summarization of your project, but also give you the ability to customize how you want Kiro to build. The result here with the Kiro IDE is you get an AI assistant in the IDE, which adapts to your way of working and not the other way around. Now, before the demo, I do want to talk just a tiny bit more about spec-driven development and why we feel like it matters. There we go. So what is spec-driven development? Spec-driven development means creating specifications as the central artifact of your development process. It's really not new, and in fact, I would argue that most of us have done it before. It's just this whole introduction of vibe coding has caused us to sort of walk away from it. So spec-driven development is a set of proven principles and formal requirements, but it introduces AI agents, or the introduction of AI agents has made it even more important to sort of cycle back to this. As I mentioned, traditional vibe coding with an AI is great for prototyping or maybe a low-risk task, and it focuses a lot on that implementation phase, but really less on the other aspects of software development, which are just as important. You can iterate fast, you can generate lots of code, and maybe you get a working solution. But what it does do sometimes as well is if it's a complex task especially, it creates this stream of consciousness problem where your design and requirements get buried in a chat log, your requirements of what you started with and now drifted to something else, and 6 months later you come back to it and nobody knows why you built what was built because there's no documentation to go with it. Anyone had this issue? Even without AI, right? This happens, so I know certainly we have as well. Now, spec-driven development solves this. Specs they serve as a contract between you and Kiro translates your natural language into a structured format that will preserve the intent while being actionable by the agents under the hood. Now, the result is higher quality output with better alignment between you and Kiro. I think it's easiest to see this as a demo, so let me show you what it looks like. So as I mentioned, Kiro supports vibe-based development. There it started. But for this demo, we're going to use spec mode with Kiro assisting us through this process. We're going to start by submitting a new prompt, just like we would with tell it what we want to build. In this case, we're building an events planning app, and we want to add the ability to add a category to these events and then sort by the category. Now, this change is going to require some database updates and some new UI components, so Kiro's going to analyze that prompt and get to work. Now, to access Kiro's specific features in the IDE, the easiest way is to navigate to that Kiro tab, and here you'll find the features I mentioned before, like the specs, the steering, and the hooks. We're going to click on our spec. Now, specs generate 3 key deliverables: requirements, design, and then the implementation of the task list. We're going to start with requirements. These are structured as user stories with well-formed acceptance criteria, and you have the opportunity to review these for completeness, and modify them as you see fit. In this case, I saw that it wasn't going to display any events that had no category, so I'm asking it to make that change. I type in natural language, and Kiro is going to make that required update to the acceptance criteria. And there we go. So with these requirements finalized, we're going to move on to the design by clicking that Move to the Design Phase button. Now, the design outlines high-level components like the API routes, the error handling strategies, or testing strategies. Now, you can modify this, or you continue to the task list. Overall, this looked really good to me, so we're going to move forward by clicking that Move to Implementation Plan button down in the lower right. And it's going to create our task list. There we go. And here's the task list. So notice the requirements traceability here. So it's linking each task back to the specific requirements that it's addressing. And now Kiro gives us a choice. It wants to know, do we want to build the MVP or do we want to build everything at the same time? If you know anything about how we like to build in Amazon, we call them MLPs, the minimum lovable product. You probably heard that a few times. So we're going to choose the MVP first. With that selection, Kiro is going to automatically go through, update that implementation plan, the requirements and the design to that new MVP scope, and we're ready to get going. So you start building by clicking the Start Task button on any of those tasks in the task list. This gives you control over the execution, letting you verify each task individually as it becomes completed. Now, our first task here is going to create the category model. And so we're going to go ahead and, it's asking to run a Python helper script if it can run that helper script. So we're going to let it do that. And it's running, and I fast forwarded a little bit here, but you can see the code is already generated, the tests are passing, so we're in good shape here. It's also asking now to run another command because it wants to validate that the database schema was run properly. If you see there in the lower right again, asking if it can run a command. So we're going to give it approval for that. And now, with the test passing and the database schema validation done, this task is complete, and you see it marks the task as complete up top. It's really that easy. Now, again, I did a little bit of demo magic here, and I fast forwarded through some parts, but I think you'll find for some of these larger tasks that these specs add some structure to what you're building. It'll feel familiar if you've done this before. It'll give you the features you're looking for, and it'll also help you build some additional artifacts along the way that will help others understand in the future why you did something that you did. Now, I mentioned this up front, but Kiro is more than an IDE, and Ericsson's one of our great customers on the CLI, so let's talk about the CLI as well. So the Kiro CLI is your AI-powered companion that lives right in your terminal. First, it handles your complete workflow, from planning and debugging issues, writing code, deployments, all without switching any context between different tools or interfaces. Second, and probably my favorite thing, is it adapts to how you work. You can build custom agent profiles and use steering files that match your team standards, your preferred frameworks, or your specific use cases. It's really not a one-size-fits-all. It's configured to your workflow. These custom agents are the thing that Dr. Ricardo just talked about in using and what he built with their security expert and their architecture expert and their user experience expert. It's all built on top of the CLI. They're a game changer because they let you adopt AI-driven development the way you want to adopt it, as opposed to what a more structured approach would take. Here's a real example, going back to the steering files, of me using the steering files in just an application that I was building for fun. So I was building a Next.js application on Vercel. And for those that aren't familiar, each request that you make, like loading a URL, costs you what they call an edge request from your quota. Kiro, which wrote all of the code, was using a capability of Next.js called prefetching, which was automatically loading all of the linked pages on each of the pages that got loaded, which is fine, except for that it was costing me an extra request for every linked page that was getting loaded. Now, as my project evolved and got bigger and I had a lot of linked pages, it was costing me far more edge requests than I wanted to, and honestly, for me, the pages were simple and it was a fun project, so it wasn't worth the quota that I was spending on that. So how do I disable that? I used my Kiro steering files and I told it that I don't want to do prefetching anymore, and now even if I forget to tell Kiro as I'm building something and it starts creating links, I get no more prefetching because it's in my steering files and it's something that I want to do. And then third, the Kiro CLI is context aware and it can share a context with the IDE as well. So you could feed it your documentation, your MCP servers, those UI designs we talked about, and it will understand that full project context. The result of the CLI is that you stay in flow in your terminal. So for those that like the terminal-based experiences, this is the one I'd suggest that you try. But it understands your way of working, and it's very, very adaptable as well. So again, I'm going to show you now a demo of probably my favorite feature is the custom agents, because they've been so powerful in helping customers adapt to the way they want to be developing. All right, so here we are in the Kiro CLI. And I'm specifically going to show you, like I said, those custom agents. So the CLI works off of what we call tools and MCP servers. So a tool is something that allows it to take a command, like reading or writing a file or searching a website. So I'm showing you the tools that are loaded or trusted for the default agent. I've also got a bunch of custom agents that I built for special purposes for me. So if I have a Jira assistant, I have a security officer, I have a solutions architect, and I also have this DevOps agent that I just swapped into. This is changing the way the CLI is working based on how that DevOps agent is configured. Let's take a look at how it's configured. So it has a set of pre-approved tools and MCP servers, and it also has a custom prompt which tells the CLI how I want it to behave and how I want it to work. Let's look at that custom prompt as well. So in this case, you see it's very verbose. I gave it very specific about how I want to build infrastructure as code for my project. Now, I'm no infrastructure as code expert, and so one of the things that I add oftentimes in my files is when it proposes a solution, I want it to tell me why that deployment strategy is the right thing to go do. This helps me learn as I go, but also helps Kiro be a bit more critical about the actions it's taking. So now I'm showing you the MCP servers that got loaded because we switched into this agent, and then you'll see here that from before that the tools are also slightly changed. So now I'm going to ask this DevOps agent to generate infrastructure as code templates, so in Terraform, for this project. Now this is the same project we were working before with this events-based planning app. And this would have taken me, honestly, hours, and maybe for me, probably even days. Like, I am not an infrastructure as code expert, and my ability to write Terraform is not good, right? While I know what I want to do, the specifics of doing it are something that I'm not great at. But here you're going to see the DevOps agents creating all of this from scratch. And these Terraform templates, again, are not generic Terraform templates. They're custom built for me based on what I requested. All right, so we're going to let this build for a second. I've also told it, I don't know if you caught this up front, but I also told it what I pre-approved and what I allow it to do on its own. So I gave it the ability to read files, but up front I had to give it approval to write any files. So we'll give it just a few more seconds to complete. And while it's doing that, just remember these are custom built for me based on how I've configured that agent. So if you want something different, you build it differently. And now you can see it complete. It's complete. It's giving me now a summary of what was got. Excuse me. Give me a summary of what got built and then what I needed to do next, because again, that's how I told it, so I wanted it to work. Now again, these custom agents are super powerful, and as I've already called out, they let you build how you want to build. They're flexible, and if you haven't tried them, give them a shot. You can write a very long and verbose file about how you want to build, and it will follow all your rules when you're building that. And they've allowed a number of customers, including Ericsson, to sort of build their AI-driven development processes the way that they want to build them. Now, we've been using, as I'm sure you imagine, we've been using the Kiro IDE and the CLI for a long time, even before we released it. And so we have some tips and tricks that might help you just build a little bit faster. First, and probably most important, provide the context up front. Don't just ask a question. Share the relevant files, paste an error message, paste a compiler error. Even better, create a custom agent to change the way it works based on how you want to build. The more context Kiro has about your environment and goals, the more accurate response you're going to get and the happier you're going to be. And also be very specific about constraints. So tell it your security requirements, tell it your preferred programming languages. If you're building production, tell it what production ready means for you. Be very specific, and it will work with that. But don't make Kiro guess. You know, oftentimes when I work with folks in teams, they're typing a single line of, generate this API. And then they're like, well, that's not the result I wanted. And I'm like, well, but you didn't really tell it what you wanted. You just told you something very simple, right? So be very specific in this. This customization and the way you prompt is very important to get the results that you want. Second thing, start with specifications for production code. This will emphasize good workflow hygiene up front, and it prevents, the generate everything and hope it works. I'm sure we've all done this before, or the YOLO pattern, as I like to call it. Reviewing these specs gives you and your team something to look at prior to the code getting generated. And oftentimes, it's easier to look through natural language and a set of requirements than it is to look through the code to figure out, did it meet all of those use cases, right? And this will position Kiro more as a disciplined development, a piece of a disciplined development process, rather than just an ad hoc code generator, as Ali talked about around those bolt-on solutions, right? This is not what we're looking for. Third, iterate and verify. This is a conversation. Review what gets generated, test it in your environment, and refine. Even better, shift everything to the left. Give Kiro the ability to run your unit test. Give it the ability to run your integration test. Give it the ability to ship your application, and if you're using any canaries, run those canaries, see the output, let it then regenerate a solution until it has a working solution, and let it provide that to you. It's really your expertise combined with Kiro here that's going to drive the best solutions, but everything you can shift left will help you get a better answer earlier than the process. And then fourth, and probably another very important one, use it for the right tasks. So Kiro excels at generating code, as we've talked about, and plans, and researching options, and helping debug issues, or maybe even exploring alternatives, but you're the team lead. You excel at knowing what done looks like, and you're responsible for assigning work. The more you use Kiro, the better you're going to understand what it does well. And if you get to the point where you understand what it does well, it's just like working with a new colleague or maybe learning a new programming language. It takes some time to understand how to work with the AI, but as you start to learn that, you'll get better and better at prompting what you want in the solution, and you'll get even better results. And then, for example, talking about partnership, going back to the project that I was building, I wanted users to see the latest information on my web app. So this is kind of an embarrassing story for me, since I just told you guys all these things to do, and I didn't do it myself. So I asked Kiro to help, but I didn't dive deep enough into what it had built. And I tried it, and it seemed like it was working. All the web pages were getting updated near real time, and I'm like, oh, this is working perfectly. So I shipped it. Now I should also say, keep in mind, this is just something for fun, not a production app. I wouldn't do that. Next morning, I checked my Vercel dashboard, and I saw thousands of edge requests. And again, this is a personal project. There's no way I had that many visitors, so what happened? Well, I didn't look at the implementation, and Kiro had shipped the ability to client-side polling on all of my sites, so that when any of my web pages were open, every single minute on any browser that had the site open was asking for a new version of the site consistently. So that's where my wedge request went, right? And I learned my lesson about the oversight and the partnership, and like not passing all of the judgment onto the AI, because that's not something that I wanted to do. The bottom line is Kiro is going to work best when you use it as a skilled collaborator and not a replacement for your judgment. Oh. It's not going forward. Oh, you got to click out of there. There we go. So I want to close out by coming back to where we started. I changed the slide just a little bit from where we started, but we're at an inflection point for how software gets built. You know, Kiro can handle the orchestration of development and the planning, the task breakdown, and the code generation. The transformation is about you making the architectural decisions, and you're validating what gets built solves the problem. You're validating that what gets built is what your customers need. You're providing the judgment and direction that Kiro is not replicating today. What I'm really excited for is the top circle of this, right? We're in this AI-driven development today, but we're just getting started. So today's Kiro is assisting and orchestrating based on your direction. But we're moving towards this AI-managed development world where Kiro doesn't just execute based on your plan, but proactively considers other alternatives, so maybe suggests improvements, and then even potentially takes autonomous action based on your performance or real-world user data. So imagine that future where Kiro's not asking for your approval and doesn't wait for you to ask, but instead it's telling you what needs your attention and where it needs help. So with Kiro, we feel like we're not, and we don't think you will be, just writing code faster. It's more about building better software with more context, more consistency, and more of what matters to your customers. So we think AI-driven development is here, and we're super excited to see what you guys do with it. Thank you. If you have any questions, we're going to stick around up front for a few minutes, so come see us.